I'm an optimistic in nature. I really believe in a better world. So I believe that we're going to do better, right? That's my way of, imagining the world, right? So I'm an optimistic in nature. But one of the things that definitely concerns me is how can we make sure that critical thinking, kids, being able to think, talk, connect, analyze, based on facts, not based on what they saw in a tablet or whatever. Thinking, right?
Here we go. Hugo, welcome. Super excited to have you here as a stakeholder slash client slash startup that we closely work with at the Accelerator Centre. It's exciting times for us, exciting times as we come out of the global pandemic, new roadmap in front of us. So no better time to have an experienced entrepreneur like you, especially in a sector which is digitizing supply chains, to have this conversation to kick off our podcast series. So welcome, Hugo, and thanks for spending time to be with us.
No, thank you very much, Jay. I'm excited and I'm honored to be actually the first one in this podcast with the AC, for many reasons, right? I mean, and I'm gonna elaborate through our conversation around it. But it's great. It's great to be here.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. So I think, before we get into wonderful discussions about supply chain and how digitization is going to change the world, I'd love to hear your story. I think a lot of folks who are listening in will be enamored by your personal story. How you started off in South America, how you're now in Canada, and then we'll touch a little bit about All Solutions, and we'll go from there. So tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I'm gonna try to make it short, but go through the whole story just to provide a little bit of background. Mm-hmm. So I'm from Chile, mm-hmm. So down in the south of the world. I'm original from a city called Valparaiso. Valparaiso is like a port. It's an old port, which is roughly an hour and a half from the capital, from Santiago. And I was born there. I lived there until I was, I think, 24, 25. So my entire life in that city. I studied industrial engineering. That's my degree, actually from a university there in Valparaiso. And I think maybe after sort of 20 years, I realized, the other day I was talking to a person who was sort of also interviewing me, and I realized that maybe that connection to the port, it explained my love for supply chain, logistics, and transportation and all of that. Now, I started my career. My first job actually was in the same city in Valparaiso in a shipping line, right? So a global transportation company. They hired me as a trainee engineer, right? So they brought me in a program where they were supposed to sort of hire 4 to 5 young engineers coming out of university, and get them in a program that would rotate them for a year, rotate them in different positions in the company. So let's say you spend three months in operation, 3 months in sales, 3 months in marketing, and at the end of that year, they're going to say, okay, you stay in operations or you stay in sales or something. Now, I was 3 months in to the job, so going through my first rotation, and there was a big crisis in the company, right? So that crisis was like, almost, I wouldn't say almost going bankrupt, but a huge cost crisis, right? And so all of a sudden, my boss said, I know you are in a program, but you're going to stay with us. So there's no rotation, right? So you're going to stay with us. My first assignment was operations. So he said, you're going to stay with us because we have this crisis, and I need you to help us with a team of people to, work on trying to figure out some things about that, what's going on with that, cost crisis that we're facing. Think about this. So it was like 3-4 months in, And after being like 5-6 years studying university industrial engineering, and I think I spent like 6 months going through invoices one by one, right? So they had a team of 5 to 10 people doing, I mean, the whole day going through invoices, physical invoices. I'm talking about 20 plus years ago, right? Going through physical invoices to identify what was going on. And that was like for 6 months. So I was thinking, holy, I was studying, for years, right? And now, I'm dedicated to this, admin work for my entire day. Now, I realized after a few months that sort of because of the fact that I was going through all of those numbers, so I became very aware of, numbers, costs, operation, what was the cost of the operations, and therefore I became like the point of consultation. So whenever a senior person in the company was, looking for some advice, they come to me just because I figured the numbers. I remember the numbers to provide, immediate feedback to that person, and that helped me quite a lot because I was moved quickly into a managerial job. It was a management, in a management job after a year. And so 1 year in the company, and I was fortunate enough to be assigned as a head of a team, a small team, 2-3 people. But it was amazing, right? Because I was, just 1 year in, and I had, the chance to start leading people. Yep. Now, from that experience, I moved into, I was fortunate enough that the company, after working with them for a couple of years, so I personally decided to quit my job. So I stopped working for the company. I said, hey folks, one of my dreams is I wanted to go to get my master degree in Europe in a university. So I applied to get my master degree in logistics and supply chain in the Netherlands, in the Erasmus University in the Netherlands. And I decided to stop working for this company. So I say, folks, I love you guys, but this is one of my dreams. I'm gonna go for it. And I went to Holland. I got married. I went with my wife, just married, and we went to Holland to get my master degree. I spent like a year and a half living in Rotterdam at the port. And again, the company said, okay, if there's nothing we can do about it, but we can offer you a job when you're back. Right. So I said, yeah, good deal. Why not? So that's what I did, right? So I went there, I got my master degree there, and I was again fortunate enough that this company was also interested to get me back. They hired me back, and then after 3-4 years, they offered me a position in Mexico. So I was offered a position as director of operations for the company in Mexico. I was sent to live in Mexico City for roughly 4-5 years. Yep. Great experience, right? Great experience living in Mexico. Getting to know the culture, getting to know the people, getting to know, how do you do business there. Amazing experience in general. A lot of negotiation, a lot of things, supply chain, getting into really the details of logistics and supply chain. Great experience. And then from there, I moved into a different role. I was hired by, again, another, in this case, it was a manufacturer, a consumer packaged goods manufacturer. They offered me a job as director of supply chain for their global operations. So I moved there. I spent in that company like 3-4 years. Great experience too. I had the fortune to work with. I learned how logistics to the retail world work. So selling to Walmart, selling to big retailers, how those supply chain and logistics work. And then finally, I moved to another position in a completely different industry, but still in supply chain. I worked for Caterpillar. Industrial parts, spare parts, completely different business, very complex, 120,000 different products to manage in inventory, to ship out to customers and so on. Very interesting business model. And then my last job as an executive working for organizations, I was offered a job in Vancouver, actually. So And that job was to become the vice president of planning and procurement for a large manufacturing company, Canadian manufacturing company based out of Vancouver. I took the chance. At that time, I was living in Chile. I have 4 kids, right? And I was wondering with my wife, hey, we already lived in Mexico, so in Holland, we're back in Chile. So should we pursue this new opportunity that is presenting to us to move again the whole family from Chile to Canada? Should we take it or not? My wife is such a great wife. I mean, she said, well, this is another adventure, right? So why not? Why don't we take it? And it's going to be good for the kids, good for us as a family. Let's do it. And we moved over. And that was back in 2015. It was a great experience again, working for that organization in the West Coast. And after roughly three and a half years, I decided to start the Owl Solutions. And after roughly being 20 plus years working for companies in supply chain, managing supply chains, and so I mean that's my passion, right? So I'm just continuing that passion now with the Owl Solutions.
Fantastic. So fabulous story, right? There were 2 things that I loved in that story, and I think for our audience, I'd love for them to take away your experience on those 2 factoids, and we'll come back to Owl Solutions in a second. So let's touch upon those 2 things. I can certainly relate to both of them as a fellow immigrant. So the first question there was, when you make a jump in your career, right? And the opportunity presents itself for a jump, both either in terms of organization or in terms of designation, and in your case, both, and at the same time, geography, all right? That's massive. That's a huge shift, right? You're changing roles, you're changing teams, you're getting into a brand new culture on the work front, and you're also changing things on the personal front because it's a brand new geography, brand new culture again, new language, etc. How difficult or how enriching was the experience of changing both? And like you said, you had great support from your wife, who I really hope is going to listen to this podcast because you had wonderful things to say about her. But walk us through that. What is that like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me elaborate a little bit about that. So first, I think that maybe I'm a weird guy, right? So in a sense that maybe different from many people. I don't necessarily like stability, right? So stability is something that, some people feel comfortable with that, and I'm not judging at all. That's completely fine. But in my case, it sort of stability means to me, okay, but what's next, or how can I continue sort of challenging myself, or so try to move out of that comfort zone, right? Yep. So that's the first thing. So I said, I'm a weird person, maybe because the first time that I said to I still remember, to my wife, hey, I'm quitting the job and I'm moving let's move to Holland, let's get married, let's move to Holland. My parents-in-law, they were saying like, you're crazy, right? So because you got a fantastic job, this is great, the best company that you could work for in this city. So are you crazy, or what's going on? So I said, I'm a firm believer, in visualizing your future. So nice. I typically try to see myself in, okay, what's going to happen in 5, 10, 20 years? How would I like to see myself in 5, 10, or whatever number of years? Yep. I'm a firm believer about that, right? So I still remember when let's say, this idea of going abroad and to get my first, my master there in Holland, it was because when I was like 15, I was thinking about that. I was thinking, hey, I would love to have the opportunity to go and study abroad. So it was part of a plan. I wouldn't say a plan, but it was in my mind, right? It was in my heart.
Yeah.
Now, the same thing when we moved to another country to work and experience, a different culture. I think it was in my mind, the fact that I wanted to really have the opportunity to give myself and my family the experience to know a different culture and sort of show them that it's possible to sort of imagine a world without necessarily, the barriers that we sort of come up with ourselves. And so I think it's back to your original question. I think definitely, any change is hard because it requires adjustment. It requires, adaptation. It requires. I always think about my kids, right? And trust me that I still remember the first time that I dropped them at school at the new country when we came here to Canada, right? So the first day, they didn't speak any English, right? So first day, dropped them in school. Although, of course, the system here in Canada is very supportive. And I mean, definitely they support immigrants and people, with especially, kids when they're at school. But think about the first day. It was like, me and my wife were looking at each other and saying, this is crazy, right? So we're dropping them off. They have no idea about what they're going to experience that day. Right. But my in the back of our minds with my wife is always like, this is for a bigger purpose. What's the purpose at the end? So I think there's some things that kids and ourselves we cannot learn by reading books.
Yeah.
And those things are things that are gonna be beneficial for you long term as a person. And the only way to experience those things is by living those things, not by reading a book. So let's say adaptation. So you guys, now my kids have lived in different countries, different cultures. They know that although they can face a challenge, we all face challenges right every day. I mean, they can go through it. They can thrive. They can learn a new language. They can meet new friends. They can build a new network. So at the end, so that's my personal inspiration. I think that I would say that and I used to say this to my wife. I mean, I think my personal legacy and our legacy as a couple to our kids is that, right? It's just the adaptation, the opportunity to believe that it's possible to thrive through complexity or challenges. That's what it is.
Absolutely spot on, right? That's a great, not just legacy, but I've heard a bunch of my friends talk about. There are two ways to raise kids, right? One is you protect them from the world, and the other is you prepare them for the world, right? And somewhere in between, I guess, lies the balance of trying to figure out what is the best way to do it. And like you very well articulated, it's an amazing journey, and I'm glad your kids will be super proud of it when they grow up and look back at this journey and this experience that you've given them. So I want to come back to one other thing that you said, which will be very interesting for entrepreneurs, especially the 20-year-olds. And let's look at it through Owl Solutions, right? I know the simplification of supply chain management that you bring to the table through Owl Solutions, how you remove human error and yet try to bring in the context of the intelligence that humans pose and bring to the table. And simplify the process. But I'd love to hear from you as to what is your dream with Owl Solutions? Oh, number one, just to give context to our audience, walk us through your perspective on Owl Solutions and where you'd like to take it.
Yep, for sure. So the reason why we started together with Miguel, the co-founder of the company, we started the company, the Owl Solutions, is because, number one, I think personally and together with Miguel, we both experienced a lot of frustration while sort of leading or dealing with day-to-day issues in supply chain, right?
Sorry, Hugo, Did you and Miguel meet at one of your previous organizations? How did you guys meet?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we worked together at Caterpillar, Finning, this large Caterpillar distributor back in Chile. Miguel was part of the team at that time, where Miguel is younger than me. I mean, he's like, we got some years of difference, and we were working in the same team. I was offered this position here in Canada, so I moved to Canada. After a couple of months being here, I noticed that our team here, we were missing some of the skills that Miguel brings to the table. I mean, he's a superstar in terms of data engineering, data analytics, and all of that. So I said, we need a person like Miguel, and a person like Miguel is not easy to find, to be honest. So I one day I was I went to Chile I was visiting my family at that time. The first 3 months I was by myself here, so I was visiting my family like at the end of the month too. And I sent a message to Miguel, and I said, "Hey, Miguel, are you up for a coffee? I would like to talk to you."
Right.
And we met in Chile, right, in a coffee shop there in Chile. And I said, "Miguel, here's the situation. So, would you like to move to Canada? If the potentially there's an opportunity for you in the company that I'm now working for. So, would you be interested?" So, he said, of course, he was first, he was a little bit shocked, right? So he didn't really expect that. And he said, let me check with my fiancée at that point, right? So let me check with my fiancée, but this sounds great, but I need to figure things out. Sure. Okay, so I said, yeah, take your time, let me know. So, a week later, I think he sent me a note saying, I was back in Canada at that point. He sent me a note and said, hey, I talked to my wife, and here's the plan. I'm going to get married. So like crazy stuff, right? So I'm going to get married we're going to sort of accelerate that. We're going to expedite that. So we want, but I'm good. I would like to take this opportunity. I think this opportunity is great. I would love to, continue to engage with you. So so that was crazy stuff, right? So imagine that. So in 3 months, Miguel was here.
Wow.
With his new wife right. At this point. Right. And and then that was second company that we worked together. So the first one in Chile, the second one here in Canada in the West Coast. So we worked for 3.5 years together. I mean, and we did a lot of progress in the things that we were looking for. And I think again back to the point of the our solution. So one of the frustrations that we went through, of course, through our personal journeys was the fact that I was a decision maker in many situations. I was the one working with my team and my the managers in the team, trying to make accurate decisions. Not based on information that was coming from an spreadsheet from the last week. No, right. Now we needed to make decisions now, and we need to make decisions hopefully with accurate information that reflect the meaning of the decision that we're trying to make today. Yep. Now that was extremely hard, and it was extremely hard not only through my career. It was extremely hard because although we had systems in place, all the companies that I worked for were mid to large organizations with a lot of system investments and everything else. We were really struggling every time that we wanted to make a decision now with real, accurate, quality information. Yep. And that's frustration. And I'm sure that, a lot of supply chain professionals in the field feel the same thing. So the frustration is that you miss a lot of opportunities. So you miss a lot of opportunities that if you have had that information at your fingertips, you could be making much better decisions. You would be better off as a professional, as an individual, as a company. You will feel more rewarded. You will feel more empowered, right. Confident. And so we sort of say with Miguel, why don't we take our experience? Why don't we take our failures and our successes? Why don't we try to come up with something that helps supply chain professionals like ourselves to do better?
Nice.
And that was the origin of the Out solution. So we said, let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, companies have, I mean, the average company has a lot of data. I mean, every single minute, a company accumulates new data. Data like, your purchase orders, your sales orders, your inventory transactions, your suppliers, bringing product in, you shipping product out to your customers. All of those transactions get somewhere stored.
Right.
Now, the challenge is that companies don't do as much as they could with all of that information. So to elide the next decision. So the next decision is the best possible decision you can make with certainty. And of course, always you can combine your expert intuition into it. But I think it's a completely different start when you have already that support.
Yep. Makes a ton of sense. And what's your ultimate dream with All Solutions?
I mean, we're working for it. I mean, we're working on trying to sort of position the OWL as the number one option for every company that is looking to really do better in their supply chain management, that they really do want to do better in solving complex problems in supply chain. So having, support that is actionable to really, sort of empower the human. Because I think one of the concepts that we really believe is that, we're passionate about helping the human become better, right? We're not declaring, we're bringing technology to replace humans.
Yep.
So what we're trying to do is how can we make that person better at doing their job, and that's our inspiration at the end.
Yeah, interesting. So going back to your story, right, and sort of tying where you want to go. Oftentimes, right, I'm conflicted with this question that keeps coming up. And you and I are of a similar breed in the sense that, we worked for a bit before we decided to go build a startup, right? And now the question that I'm often posed with is, hey, I'm 20 years old. I have no baggage. I have no responsibilities, no liabilities, don't have a fiance or a wife. And hopefully that means I don't have kids. Although a case could be made the other way, but nevertheless. From your experience, right? How valuable were those 2 decades of experience as you built a startup? That's one part of the question. The other part of the question is the flip of it. Do you think you would have been better off without any baggage, any experience, had you done what you're doing now, if you did this in the 90s?
That's a super good question, Jay. And here are my thoughts. I think the 20 years of experience sort of put me in a position where I think I learned, by making mistakes. I learned by, of course, having successes as well. Working for corporations where, for instance, decision making was important every single day. Every single day we were playing with big numbers, right? So if our decisions were not accurate, we were risking a lot of things, right?
Right.
And I think learning from those experiences, I think set me in a position where I think what I call this intuitive expert intuition. I think those 20 years helped me with that, right? Helped me with that building that expert intuition and being able to be in sometimes maybe in a lot of stressful situations where you need to make decisions. So I think I learned some of the things that you have to consider for being hopefully successful at that process, right? Now, the other way around. So if I could have started this business like 20 years ago, of course, as you said, there's less baggage in many aspects, right? personally, and all of that. But to be honest, I believe that this was the perfect age for me to start this, right? So I started my first company, or the Owl Solutions at when I was 45. or 40, 44, right? So I think, but I really value experience, right? I think experience again help you to approach things from a different perspective.
Right.
And I think, and that's why I think also the combination of sort of my experience with Miguel, he is, as I said before, at least 10 years younger than myself. He brings maybe, the other elements to the equation that maybe, the more energy in certain decisions, more actions, immediate actions, certain things. I think that balance is what make us a good fit.
Yeah, that's a great word, balance. Which brings me to a question that often entrepreneurs struggle to, I guess VCs struggle, the investors struggle more than the entrepreneurs, which is, when you go out to raise capital, do you feel like there's an elephant in the room as far as age is concerned, right? And the question is never directly posed, hey, are you too old for me to invest? And if you're 20 years old, would I as an investor have been better off? Do you feel like that's a problem that needs to be addressed?
That's a very good question as well. Here's my thought. So, and I'm not talking about investors specifically. I'm going to get into investors in 1 minute, but just a preamble to that. So I think that there's a lot of bias, right? And we're all biased. We're all biased because of different situations, right? We're human beings, and that's part of our. I'm just going through a very interesting book today that I'm sure you know, which is Thinking Fast and Slow, right? From Daniel Kahneman, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that we all operate many times a lot based on the system one, which is this intuition based and more biased, approach. And I think that that's part of human nature. And of course, we need to make sure that hopefully this system two, sometimes, the more rational, the more, the slow, system operates and as well. And why I'm saying this is because, age is one potential bias, right?
Right.
Or age consideration. But, color is also, a potential consideration. Race, so there's many biases, right? When you think about the way how you speak, I speak English, but it's not my primary language, right? So I speak Spanish. So therefore, I definitely have an accent. So therefore, there's multiple biases in the equation. And again, it's not judgment; it's just describing situations, right? Now let's go into investors. Investors are human beings, right? So first of all, they suffer from the same bias, the same bias. Now, personally, I haven't experienced or felt that in discussions with investors, that specific topic about age was a comment or a consideration or a concern or nothing like that. Yeah. But I always start thinking that, we're human beings, we have natural bias. And that's normal. Of course, I want to make sure that hopefully I present myself with enough clarity for people to understand and judge based on facts. And hopefully system two operates, more than system one many times.
Right. Yeah, I'm fairly in the 30 odd minutes that we've spent. I don't think there's any stone unturned when it comes to the way you articulate and present clarity. So that's great. And to your point of bias, I love it, right? I grew this mustache as a COVID afterthought during COVID. And oftentimes I get into conversations, and most of the times it's calls, right? So you can't suss out body language, you're not in person. And I feel like it's important that I stress upfront before this person takes me seriously or not, more often not than the case is, because of this handlebar mustache. So I got to make some jokes out of it, right? I've got to get the elephant out of the room and say, yeah, I'm a reasonably credible guy. Don't judge me by the mustache. Right? So yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
but let's think for 30 seconds, a minute about that, right? So, honestly, what's the point? What's the point, right? I mean, you know, it's unbelievable. But it's the way how our system one operates. Our minds have been set for years. I mean, I think you look fantastic with that mustache, by the way.
Thanks
you
so
know,
much. Yes.
but you know, this is part of the reality, right? And again, we're human beings, and this is how we operate many times. But I believe that I mean, we all have biases in many situations and many day-to-day things. I'm just saying that, you know, if we can also do a rational exercise to understand facts, look at the picture, provide. I mean, I love the word perspective. I think perspective is a fantastic one of my favorite words. I would say. I think today. You know, and that's one of the things that I believe that I'm trying to teach my kids, you know, every day as well as much as I can, is context and perspective. Context and perspective. And hopefully, you know, this idea of, you know, reflect about what you have said. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm an optimistic in nature. I really believe in a better world, so I believe that we're going to do better. Right? That's my way of, you know, imagining the world. Right? So I'm an optimistic in nature. But one of the things that definitely concerns me is how can we make sure that critical thinking, kids, you know, being able to think, talk, connect. Analyze based on facts, not based on what they saw in a tablet or you know whatever. thinking, right?
It's a very interesting topic on which I'm sure we can have a 1 more hour's discussion. The ability to create a method and a setting for people to think, you know, is to a large degree being eroded because of social media, right? You look at these little devices that condition you over and over again, and I really worry, to your point about how kids are exposed to these devices and what it drives them to do.
100%, and I think that we all have a responsibility on this, and that's the thing. I mean, we cannot outsource that responsibility, especially when you are where you're raising kids. And your first primary responsibility is making sure that there's a good balance, as you mentioned at the very beginning. There's a good balance between protecting them, certain situations, but at the same time, getting them exposed to make decisions, right? And giving them the tools, right, to make hopefully the most. You know, I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but you know, sometimes they're gonna fail. They're gonna make mistakes, and that's fine. That's part of the learning process. I mean, and but I think giving them the tools to analyze. I mean, one of the things that I typically do with my kids, you know, every once in a while. It's not every Saturday, but every once in a while. So I throw, a topic to the table, right? So we're having lunch or whatever, you know, and I said, hey, let's talk about this. So what's your opinion on this? And we start talking, right? So I sort of try to poke, you know, questions about certain things, and but I ask them to have an opinion, right? So have an opinion. I mean, it could be. I'm not going to judge. I mean, this is completely open, right? This is completely open, but it's important to have an opinion, and hopefully that opinion is built on, you know, some reflection, right? So I mean, are you thinking about this? I mean, and let me just go a little bit deeper into that thought, right? So why do you think you know this way? And I think that's, again, this is you know a way for me to at least make sure that in this world that we're living in, of course they still of course continue developing that ability to think critically, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a question. Actually, you'll be a great person to answer this, right? One of the things that Canada is undergoing is this tremendous wave, driven a lot through policy, of potentially getting immigrants into the country who are going to change the the landscape. A lot of it has to do with entrepreneurship, right? About a decade ago, I heard this very interesting speech by one of the guys at a very large venture capital fund. And he said the thing that I find interesting is, contrary to popular belief that first generation immigrants have a disadvantage when they build a brand new business in a new country, the reality is that they have an advantage. And that advantage is hunger, which if you're from, if you're native, you inherently may not have that hunger because you're comfortable. You're comfortable with the society and the community and the people that you're with. Do you think there's truth to it?
I think so. I mean, I wouldn't say that, of course, it applies to 100% of the cases, right? So there's always exceptions, and for sure that's something that it also, I guess, depends on the message and how they see you as a person. Your kids see you, your second generations, they see you working, your work ethics, the way how you approach life, and I think, of course, I mean that has a huge impact, right? But I believe that one common trait that you find in successful entrepreneurs or people that is trying to make an impact is hunger. I mean, as you said, that spirit that sometimes you're gonna face, because in entrepreneurship, of course, you're gonna face number of challenges is unbelievable, right? But but you have to imagine a future, and you have to, again, going back to my point regarding visualizing things. So you have to visualize a better future. Therefore, you just keep going, right? So you just keep going. You assume that it's part of the picture, and it's gonna be part of the picture, that there will be a lot of things to overcome. But that's the path that you have chosen. And I think I think taking also accountability on that decision, I think, is super important. But I agree with the fact that I think, again, common trait for me is hunger. Being able to imagine that better future and go for it. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that subconsciously inherent in a lot of first generation immigrants is the drive, right? The drive to succeed and fight every single thing that comes your way. And a lot of it is potentially subconscious, but you take those traits and characteristics that allow you to fight, and you channelize all of that in entrepreneurship, the odds of you succeeding tremendously all of a sudden go up, because you're focusing on the right things, and, like you said, driven by optimism. Entrepreneurs are insanely optimistic, right? Entrepreneurs are essentially borderline mad. You gotta be insane to go and try and change the world, because the whole world is against you. And I don't know if people will get it, right? It's only entrepreneurs who understand that when you're in the seat of driving a company, forget all this roadmap and strategic stuff. Every day is about putting out a fire, if not more. Every day, right?
100%.
Hustle and keep going at it, because you're so optimistic. Right?
No, you're 100%. And I think, I mean, for me at least, I think it's a source of inspiration. I wouldn't say that going against or going through challenges after challenges is always nice. Of course, you would like to have a rest sometime, right? But I think for me, it's a source of inspiration.
Right. Yeah.
And let me share with you a story, right? So, one day, one of our team members, right, that works for the Al Solutions, one day she said in a meeting that one of the reasons why, or probably the most important reason why she likes working for a company, she's also an immigrant, right? So she immigrated to Canada maybe, 20 years ago. So she's been here for a long time, but she came here, to study actually at university. And she said, she's also from Chile, by the way, from South America. So she said, My one of the things that inspire me to work with you guys is that you're making your way, you're making your path in a territory that is not your territory. So you're creating the path. You're building. You're going against some odds, right? So because we're not in our territory. We're not natural territory, I could say, right? So we don't have a network. We don't have many things that would facilitate our path forward somehow. So, but she said, I'm inspired, and I would like to continue helping the company to move forward simply
Nice.
because I believe in your cause. I believe that we're making history, hopefully building a company in a country where none of the founders are from here, where of course that could somehow has pros and cons as everything in life,
Yeah.
but I'm inspired by that.
Yeah.
When I heard that comment, it was like, wow, those are the rewarding things, right? I mean, there's so many challenges that go through, but when, for instance, you hear things like that, I believe that that's exactly what we're trying to do as well. And hopefully, it's not by purpose, but, definitely would love to, in the future, if I visualize myself in 5, 10 years, whatever number of years, I would love to support more entrepreneurs coming from, different countries to being able to succeed, right, and achieve their sort of the dreams here or in States or wherever they are, right. So that's why not?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? You find inspiration from sources who believe in the cause that you're changing the world, right? And that's what keeps you going. And it's usually a very, very noble cause, right? It's to change the status quo. It's to bring things that are not there. It is to see things that don't exist. It is to chart a new territory which nobody else would have dared to go down the path of. So, yeah, I mean, to me, one of the beauties of working in an organization like the AC, and I keep telling that to my team members, is you will not get the luxury and the honor, and specifically those two words, of being on the forefront of tens of entrepreneurs. It's one thing to build a company. It's another to support 100 companies. And these are 100 visionaries who are hustling to change the world, right? And to be right at the forefront of that, man, that I'll pay to be there. Forget getting paid to be there. Right? It's it's amazing. It's very inspiring. You don't need to look any further than to have conversations with folks like you to be inspired to do our job. So on behalf of the AC, I should thank entrepreneurs like yourself to be able to have this luxury of doing what we do.
Yeah, you're super right. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No. I was about to say that you're 100% right, and actually that's one of the things that I really appreciate also about being at the AC is that opportunity, right? So it's the opportunity to connect with other people, see and learn from the stories of other people as well.
Yeah.
So I think, and again, this journey of being an entrepreneur it could be a quite lonely journey, right? If you don't
Right.
really get to sort of find some allies, right? In the journey. So I think that having the opportunity to learn about those experiences and try to create that community around things. I think this is one of the things that I really value the most about being able to be engaged with the AC, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. And then with this new roadmap, we're hoping to do 2 or 3 things, right? One is how do we build communities where we can support entrepreneurs? One thing you touched upon is this concept of lonely, and it is lonely, right? It's a tough battle. But the other one is how do we bring the ability for companies to go global? What does it take? Does it take capital? Does it take new business development channels? Does it take partnerships? But let's work on it. Let's work on it as an organization to make sure that there's access to global markets, right? That's one thing I absolutely want to work on for the companies. And on that note, we went through this insane 2 years as a species, right? Actually, we're still going through it. One of the things that really got hampered was supply chains across the world, right? And now we're beginning to understand that supply chains were stressed to start with. If anything, COVID has only, number one, accelerated it, and number one, made people understand that this was the way supply chains were set up were not sustainable to begin with, right? And that's where folks like you come and change the world, right? So you had supply issues, you had insane demand issues, you now have global politics playing a role with embargoes, etc. Manufacturers are stressed, labor forces are really distressed. It's hard to find labor in the left side of the value chain, if you will. How has all this affected OWL? Have you guys pivoted? Has this been a blessing in disguise? Has it impacted you? What's your take on this?
Yeah, so I think it's a mixed result. I could say that on the one hand, I think we have saved some marketing money because supply chain has been in the news by default, right? Yeah. So everyone is speaking about supply chain. I think in the past, a couple of years ago, first meeting that I got into a customer or whatever, so I had to sometimes I had to explain, or if I come across to a person or investor, so I had to explain what supply chains are, right? So so I think fast forward 2 years, I think that explanation is clear, right? So people now even in the streets understand a little bit more about what supply chains are, which is great on the one hand. Now, on the other hand, it also represents challenges, because over the last 2 years, I see a lot of companies, and with all the right reasons, right, extremely focused on keeping the shop running, right? So I think you gotta keep the shop running with all the constraints, with all the challenges, with labor, with systems, with visibility, demand and supply disruptions and everything. So a lot of the focus has been how do we keep the shop running, right? So I think opening the door for further innovation sometimes is clear that we need it, but sometimes they are challenged to acquire that innovation in the short term, which is completely understandable, by the way. I'm not so just fact. Now, I think for us has been good. I mean, I think for us as a company, OWL Solutions in 2021 is growing 5 times, as compared to 2020. So this year we're going to end up with in a much better spot than last year. So we are convinced. It's not because we're just crossing our fingers. We're seeing it, that 2022, after some of the global transportation issues are a little bit more addressed. I mean, there will be a huge uptick in demand for companies looking to upgrade, the foundations of their supply chains. Yep. So let me give you one example. I think one of the things that companies have realized through this crisis is that having information, fresh information, hopefully closer to real-time information, not to prevent. I mean, it could be crazy to say that we would have been able to prevent some of the challenges that COVID brought us, but at least to being able to adapt faster. Right. So think about this example. So again, in the past, I was the person sort of making decisions for a manufacturing company. And if I ask a person, hey, could you please let me know what's the latest information that we have on service level from my suppliers? And that person is going to say to me, it's going to take me a day to pull information and create some nice formulas and whatever to show you that. Yeah. I think decision makers are realizing through this crisis that that's not an acceptable answer or state anymore. Right. That they need to operate in a different cadence. They need to operate in fast motion, not in slow motion.
Right.
And I think this was only one of the learnings, I think, that again, I think as societies and supply chains are gonna get us stronger moving forward. So that's why I'm so optimistic that 2022 is gonna bring a lot of investment around this, a lot of companies looking to upgrade again their foundations and adopt some of those digital tools and the digitization of things that they're gonna get us much better prepared to what's coming next, right?
That's very interesting because it almost sounds like the concept of efficiency driven by just in time, which existed in the realm of manufacturing. You guys are on the forefront of doing, of democratizing just in time across the value chain, right? Not just on the manufacturing aspect of it, but right across the supply chain. So you remove all inefficiencies right from left to right, right? But that's eventually the direction, right?
Exactly. And I think, if I could find hopefully a word, I think you mentioned the word efficiency. I think an efficiency has different phases, right? There's not only one phase. I think the traditional phase of efficiency, and that's part of the problem that we're facing, right? That the traditional phase of efficiency that companies have implemented is look at cost, look at time cost, and maybe look at asset utilization, right? So do I have too much or too less inventory, right? So assets. Now, I think one of the interesting developments that I'm really also excited to see happening is that I think more and more companies are now sort of forced to incorporate a fourth element, which is also sustainability, right? So the sustainability component in the decision-making process. So think about this. If I'm a buyer purchasing, ingredients or raw materials coming from everywhere. So typically that buyer, under the traditional, conventional, decision-making process, that person is going to think about cost, cheapest option, fastest option, or the option that hopefully get us with the lowest possible inventory, in order to be efficient, right? That's the phase of efficiency. Now, what about the fourth variable, which is, are we making the right decision in terms of sustainability? So our impact as an organization into the environment, the impact of our organization about, the plastics that we throw to the environment, or, the carbon footprint, we're bringing this by air instead of, by ocean. That fourth variable, to be honest, is not still on the table for many, many organizations.
Got it.
Now that situation is changing, right? And I'm excited to see that change. And hopefully we're thinking about, even alternatives on how to help organizations to incorporate that fourth variable to really consider the whole equation and understand supply chain, because at the end, supply chains are systems, right? Systems. Therefore, if that system becomes the phase of efficiency of that system, is not only cost, it's not only time, it's not only asset, it's also your social impact. And that's the whole picture.
This is fantastic. I love that for multiple reasons, right? I just realized we're out of time, and it's a great note and a message to put out there to all the stakeholders, right? That we do have a responsibility to continue doing what we do, not purely from the sense of changing the world and being innovative, but we have a responsibility to pay it forward and keep this going, right? So the only planet that we have, we got to keep it real for the next generation. On a parting note, Hugo, I would have asked you, what is the one message that you would give to entrepreneurs who are hustling, right? And for me, the takeaway that of all the things that you put out there is visualization. I love it. The fact that you can have the mental capacity to visualize where you are in 3 to 5 years really gives you a brand new paradigm through which you can measure what you're doing now. So I'm going to flip the question and ask you, what would you not do? What's the advice that you'd give to entrepreneurs to not do to succeed, both in life as well as in their entrepreneurial journey?
Believe that you are right. So
good
believe
one.
that you're right, and that you're going to continue doing what you think it is the best path without listening from others. I think one of the things that I really like is, or that I've learned personally, right? It's a humbling exercise to be an entrepreneur, to be honest. So after being 20 years working for companies, you learn a lot of things from a technical standpoint, right? But personally, I had a little understanding about what it means to build a business, right? And that's humbling, I believe. And I think that requires to set yourself in a position where I'm going to sit here, I'm going to listen from mentors, I'm going to listen from coaches, I'm going to talk to other folks that have gone through this journey, and I'm going to set myself in a position where I don't believe that I have the truth. I'm open to listen, right? And therefore, that openness is, again, back to your question. So that would be my advice. So don't think that you have the truth. Be humble, listen, connect with people, get feedback. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's great. That's a fabulous message, which I am also going to embrace. It's fantastic. So thank you so much, Hugo. It was wonderful chatting with you. I wish we could have gone on, because this is a great conversation. But thanks for allocating time. Thanks for making this happen. And look forward to catching up in person very, very soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Jay. I mean, it's been a great conversation. I appreciate the chat, the questions, and the interaction. It's been great. I'm looking forward to have you here.
Fabulous. Hey, thanks a lot. I'm going to end this with a clap for the fact that it's a message that goes back to the studio. So thank you so much.